I keep forgetting it.
It is the Fantasy Sanctuary Best Ball Show with myself and, of course, Tyler. But most importantly, we are joined by the very excellent John Daigle from Establish the Run tonight. We'll be drafting in Best Ball Mania, so be sure to be primed and ready to hop in with the three of us if you want to take advantage of some of the mistakes we might just make as we all fight it out for the players we want. Daigle, how's Best Ball Summer treating you so far?
Everything's going well. I'm not too far into my 150 for BBM 6 just yet, just because I've been trying to hammer out and get all the content done for the best ball package at Establish the Run right now. But I would imagine give me this month and I'll be at least 25% of the way done. And then we'll go from there. I like to hammer out a lot more drafts come August to round out my core.
Yeah, I think it can get exhausting if you draft. Like, I mean, Tyler, how many drafts do you reckon you're in at this point in the year?
Ooh, it's too many. We're looking at 200. No. Yeah, just shy of like 200.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, you can get that kind of fatigue from doing it. So I don't blame you for leaving it. And there's something sometimes about August drafting when things are coming thick and fast where there's a lot of time for it to be enjoyed there. We are in and we are still just waiting on 11. This is a BBM 30-second draft. So if you are going to hop in, be sure to do so quickly. Promo code Sanctuary for anybody who hasn't signed up to Underdog somehow. But Daigle, like one of the articles that you pumped out recently on ETR, and you have been absolutely killing it with the content over there. You were talking about your week 17 tiers of the games which matter the most to you. And right at the top is one that feels quite topical today because it was the Lions at Vikings. Now, obviously, Jared Goff is playing inside a dome at that point, and we know how much the Jared Goff splits can matter. But do you have any concern with Frank Ragnow retiring today that one of the best centers in the league, an all-pro, Pro Bowl player for the last 2 years, if Jared Goff's not protected well, does that give you any kind of pause for the whole offense? And obviously Ben Johnson's moved on at all, or do you just still think that overall the Lions have enough that we should be confident in them?
Oh, much like Sam Darnold going to Seattle, I'm very worried about Jared Goff without Ben Johnson, a worse offensive line, a worse defense, just someone to actually make life easier for him. Yes, the game is indoors and these are my week 17 tiers at ETR, but also they are batted around with the crew as everything at ETR is. And then regurgitated after that with more opinions, including Dinks, Leone's, Justin Herzig's, Adam Levitan's, of course, everyone's. And we still feel like Lions Vikings is a game indoors that could be an absolute train wreck. Like, it's not just going to be efficiency this year for the Lions. I think they're going to be in significantly worse situations, especially since Dan Campbell is a culture builder, not really a hands-on coach in terms of the play calling on both sides of the ball. So yeah, it could be a little bit of a mess. I also think everything Minnesota has done this year suggests that they want to be, if they can be, more run heavy, lean on Brian Flores' defense, and instead get the job done with both Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. But again, in this divisional round that's indoors in week 17, will that actually happen? I'm not sure. So it could be I am looking at it as a game that could be a little more chaotic leading to points as opposed to one that we believe is going to be extremely efficient and then lead to points.
Yeah, I could definitely buy that. Like, in terms of the Vikings side, Tyler, we've drafted a bunch of teams, but I don't feel like we've kind of talked about JJ McCarthy too much. And I know you are probably one of the most sleuth-heavy people when it comes to Nuggets and stuff. And last week, some JJ McCarthy hype kind of got a little bit out of control. Were you buying it?
I mean, I think it's just a byproduct of the negativity that's been there, seemingly, I think, for like the last 6 months. Where is he at in his, recovery? Overreacting to what we found out was not a major ligament repair. It was a minor tear, so it was a minor surgery, and so his recovery was going to be quicker. Then there was the Aaron Rodgers FUD. Oh, he's definitely going to come and mess everything up, just like Brett Favre. There was a lot of narrative FUD. Rookie, he was QB5, QB6 in his class. A lot of question marks, really raw, lots and lots of FUD. And so the second he's healthy, he's on the field, and he's looking good in shorts, like you would hope a first-round quarterback prospect would. People are kind of like, oh my God, it's not all raining hellfire from above. So I think that the middle ground is likely true. He's healthy, he's feeling good, he's looking sharp, because the baseline was too low. And now it's back to, okay, this is a Kevin O'Connell offense with like one of the most solidly deep O-lines and offensive weapons across the board in the league. And really all we need to see out of him is to be pretty league average for a lot of these guys to perform very well. We saw Darnold have really high spikes, really low floors, just given his type of archetype. And so I do think, we've seen multiple quarterbacks make this offense churn. And that's probably some of the excitement, is just seeing the young rookie contract quarterback looking sharp, taking advantage of the full reps. I'm not going to lose my mind over things, but I mean, from a rushing perspective, if his leg is feeling good and looking good, awesome. That helps with the arm stuff. But it's certainly just a fan base that's ravenous for an answer that is young, more than anything. And I want to keep that in mind with regards to the beat.
My early JJ McCarthy thoughts also, and my stock towards him is not conducive of like how I view the Vikings offense if it were to fall apart anyways, just because my drafts right now are really boring. They're kind of all the same thing, just because it's so early. I'm still padding for OTA and training camp injuries. And so I'm pretty sound in my 4 to 5 running backs, 3 QBs, 3 tight end builds. Even if I draft an elite quarterback, one of the top 5s, top 6, the cutoff is Joe Burrow there. I'm still usually grabbing one of Geno Smith or Jackson Dart at the end to take on a third quarterback. So that's how long I wait. Like, I wait beyond JJ McCarthy and grab one of those other guys who I think are going to be starting in the second half of the season. And that's just how I draft right now. So it doesn't really lend itself to adding much JJ McCarthy, which could be a flaw, in my game.
So, like, if you've got a preferred way to stack this as one of your tier 1 games, Daigle, like, what's like the perfect Week 17 Lions at Vikings game stack?
That's the thing also, is that all of their stocks are an account for Week 17 already too. You're not getting discount on any of these guys, especially TJ Hawkinson right now, which is still living up to the hype 2 years ago when literally everything went right for him in that season with the Vikings, including starting with the astronaut that the name slips my mind right now. Josh
Dobbs.
Thank you, Josh Dobbs, who literally, with both the Vikings and Cardinals, led the league in tight end target rate. And TJ Hawkinson then also got 7 starts without Justin Jefferson. Like, you couldn't draw a better outing. And then people have just seemed to have forgotten that the last 2 years in Hawkinson's ADP that he just won't get that lucky again. So, including Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, who may miss a few games at the beginning, but as we know for best ball, we legitimately don't care. We just look up and say, if you're giving us a discount for 3 games at the beginning of the year, we're going to take that on every time. I'd argue even Jordan Addison's ADP right now, that's accounted for. And so, like, Ty Felton is the only guy that you really get a discount on, unfortunately. So I'll still add Jordan Mason. He's in that Jaylen Warren tier of running backs, tier like 5, that I think you should swoop back in, stop drafting wide receivers, and then come back for that group because they all have elite contingency value. But yeah, that's right now. Honestly, it's just hard to get any discounts on this Viking stack because of what the runes do.
Yeah, they are really tethered. I do agree with you that they're tethered in that way. I do think TJ Hawkinson's ADP potentially gives us something because, and I was talking about this recently on a stream, while he is kind of more expensive of a similar bet as like Travis Kelce, who goes probably like 1 to 1.5 rounds past him, we do know that like coming off the ACL this last year, he should be physically closer to where he was a couple years ago. And his ceiling, kind of like the Kittle ceiling, is that contingent wise, if any of the guys miss time, it condenses around those other guys. And so I think that Hawkinson's ADP in a vacuum could be expensive, quote unquote. If McCarthy's good, if the offense is good, and any one of these guys misses, a lot of time, his value is going to rise. And that is an interesting thing to take a bet on, since he kind of goes right around Aaron Rodgers. And it is funny we're talking about that because potentially we'll have that here available to us picking from the 3 spot as we get started up here in our BBM. But I just, from the Yak perspective, I wonder we're all kind of wondering what this offense is going to be like with KOC running it with JJ McCarthy. And it'll be interesting that if they try to make it more tight end focused for middle of the field stuff, just his yak ability could, the tail end of efficiency, essentially.
I think my personal early opinion is that the floor, it doesn't bottom out as much with JJ McCarthy under center, because Sam Darnold's worst games, as we saw the last 2 weeks, quite literally collapse the entire team.
Yeah.
And there's impossible to win with a player like that when he's that bad. But also, I do question the ceiling being as high, at least in the first year of JJ McCarthy.
No, totally.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about Justin Jefferson, it's been so elite. You're talking about like what, nearly 90 receiving yards per game average across all his years, and it's just so consistently been high that I'd like to believe it can continue. So I'm definitely giving KOC the benefit of the doubt. This is fine. Truly appreciate you gifting those memberships to the chat. If you've been beneficiary of one of those, make sure you jump in the Discord. You can find it in the posts on the channel. We've got my rankings, loads of other stuff. We'll come back to that in a minute. But Jamar Chase goes 101. We'll see what happens at 2. Justin Jefferson does go. So, Daigle, are you team running back here or going down to CD Lamb?
I'm good with team running back early on, just because I'm not sure how often we will get these early picks if the running backs happen to stay this high. And so right now I'll just take the guys like Jamar Chase if I'm 101. I take Chase if only because I'm not sure how often I'll get to get him.
Barkley or Bijan?
I'm fine with Barkley. I don't care. If y'all want to go Bijan, doesn't matter to me. Same team.
I'm easy. We'll steer with Barkley. I think there's definitely part of me that's kind of worried about the whole, running backs after 400 touches stuff. I know friend of the channel, Ian Hards, put out some stuff on that today on Twitter, and you can kind of view it in different lights. You can say, is that a CMC stat? Is that a Derrick Henry type stat? Or is that an all running back stat? Do you have any kind of concerns about it, Daigle?
What is the stat that's being debated now?
It's basically the running backs coming off 400 plus touches tend to do miserably. So average 12.7 games for next year.
Yeah.
So it's obviously a bit of a downer when you've had that many touches, but it's possibly not the most foolproof stat.
I usually lean on that. Typically, what is the threshold been? 390 plus touches, and then the last guy that did that was Josh Jacobs, and then the following year after that was the Packer season just last year. So he did buck that trend. Yeah, I still tend to believe in it, but again, it's an early sample since so few running backs have done it the last decade.
Yeah. In terms of
if you had leaned on it for gosh, I'm trying to think. I guess the meta has now become instead avoiding the injured players and running backs in general who we believe just because they're showing up, like Nick Chubb, Javonte Williams, will have a ceiling, when I think that's becoming more relevant, that's clearly not the case at all. We should just be avoiding those guys because even their sticker prices don't take into account just getting zeros from them.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
It's like you get the argument of somebody has to carry the ball, and I'm not willing to make those bets a lot of the time. I think, we did this with like Darnell Mooney being wide receiver 1 in Chicago at one point. Now, obviously, Darnell Mooney's a fine player now, but it's like that somebody has to catch the ball or somebody has to carry the ball arguments. They're just so thin that unless you're getting a really cheap price on them, I'm not willing to go there.
Yeah. Also, go ahead, Tyler.
Just 2 quick things on that. I think one is Jeff Mueller, Fantasy Doc, friend of the channel, noted that it's a very noisy heuristic when you really dig into it. And that's, I don't know how much value it gives. I think we see the injuries come from a lot of different variations. And at the end of the day, and to your point, Tom, I think the problem with those like empty touch things is kind of just simply that if you're not efficient with the touches you're getting, we know that modern NFL offenses will just go to the guy who's efficient with it. It's not they'll use the undrafted guy. We get Brock Bowers falling. Do we want to get really robust and avoiding receiver here, or do we want to grab a receiver and see what comes back around to us?
We already have an anchor RB. I'm cool with Bowers. I'm cool with the falling Bowers.
Yeah. I'm good with Bowers. I think, you talk
Unless you
about
have a wide
so
receiver, you'd rather go here and then take McBride on the
I
comeback.
don't, and I'm fine taking the
Cool.
Bowers fall right now because I'm not afraid of these rooms, Daigle. I'm here to tell the rooms what I want to do, and I'm not afraid of getting boxed out at receiver because I like the gross receivers if I need to. But yeah, so I do think to your Javonte point, we just saw it last year. Despite all the volume, they eventually phased him out for someone that could do more with the ball. That ended up being Marvin Mims, Michael Burton, and splitting McLaughlin and Estime down the middle, depending on what game they were playing. So there's definitely risk to Daigle's point about the ADP doesn't take into account what happens if you're so bad with the volume, you become relegated. Zeke, same thing kind of last year. Rico finally hitting his stride because the offense could not give the ball to Zeke anymore and risk getting nothing out of those plays.
So back on the clock, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison, Rashee Rice, Tyreek Hill, JSN, Devontae Adams. Tyler, I know you're a sicko and want Devontae Adams, but Daigle, any of those wide receivers you'd lean to particularly?
Gosh, they're all bad. I think I take Garrett Wilson's volume and cross my fingers. But I mean, there's no good argument for any of these players. They're just here. This is why I take Chase Brown here instead, just because I don't want any of these guys.
I think the nice thing about Garrett Wilson is simply because it opens up the Fields stack, which is an arbitrage on the elite quarterbacks, which we will likely be avoiding given our, Barkley Bowers start through 3. And, it seems like the risk of benching is pretty low given the money that they gave him and the lack of competition behind him. And his rushing is just, going to be a Konami code full season. So, and it's kind of easier to stack too, because it doesn't seem like they have a whole lot, as far as wide receiver 2 and 3 go, but it could just be condensed and efficient. Yeah, I know. Just,
Josh Reynolds.
Go get your Alan Lazard, Josh Reynolds, and Arian Smith is showing out. Guys, a fast guy in shorts is having a really solid OTAs. We've never heard of that before. But it's just it's a condensed offense. It's easy to stack, and it arbitrages some nice prices.
This tier of wide receiver is why I'm kind of fine taking Brock Bowers where we took him, because it's so much easier for me to believe in him. And the Raiders last year, he did what he did with a team that ranked 26th in red zone pass attempts last year. So, if they take just even a marginally good step forward under Geno Smith, who was far better at completing the ball and doing quarterback things, then I think that the touchdown upside for Bowers is so good, along with the receiving volume, that I've got more faith in him by an absolute mile than any of those wide receivers. And I'm willing to just say, well, we'll take Bowers and we just deal with what we deal with at wide receiver.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a couple things in the chat I quickly want to pull up before we move on too far, and that is Hartman did jump back in and correct me. He was right. That's what I was trying to get to. Josh Jacobs had led the league with 390 plus touches. And then the following year, yards per attempt, yards per touch, and points per game dropped off significantly. That's the last guy to do it. Does it happen to Saquon Barkley? I'm not sure, but it is a theory I do strongly believe in and think it has been a right majority of the time if you reach 390 plus touches. And then for Garrett Wilson's volume, this is fine. I know he's in all of our streams. He says this is the first he's hearing of that, which is shocking because remember, before they added Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson was top 5 in target share in the entire league. It just came down to his inaccurate targets, which is why he was a fringe top 12 wide receiver in points. And then I think that's pretty much the same thing we're looking at here is that there likely won't be a lot of pass attempts. Everything the Jets are doing suggests they are going to run the shit out of the ball, but also they have to pass the ball somewhere. There is room for one target to survive. That target would, of course, be Garrett Wilson because he's the only one who can earn targets. And then what do those targets look like from Justin Fields? Probably bad, but we also have a range of outcomes that include DJ Moore from Justin Fields as well. So I don't mind taking on again that volume from Garrett Wilson, but it's probably going to be ugly.
So going back a bit to the week 17 conversation, and we're going to be on the clock in a minute and we come back to this, but are there any Patriots that you actively like stacking with the Jets at this point? Or do you think, I know it's one of your tier 4 games, Daigle. So does that mean that you're really not aggressively pursuing it at all?
Not really, to be honest, because it is Garrett Wilson, Justin Fields. I don't think I have faith in anyone beyond that. I do know there are some round 16 on disciples that are yelling for Alan Lazard, which is fine. I've drafted bad players from round 16 on all the time, still currently. I'm drafting Adam Thielen, by the way. So who am I to say that you can't get to a secondary Jets receiver? And by the way, who do we pick there?
So we've got Devonta Smith, Marion Hampton, Cortland Sutton, DK Metcalf, Jalen Hurts sitting there. Hampton does go.
Makes it easy for
I'm
us.
good with most of the wide receiver choices. Tyler, any big pull here?
I mean, I want to lean Daigle's way because I think this is a very flat tier. Flowers seems healthy, but any of these guys are just, we're just
I like
going to
Devonta or
target.
DK.
Let's go
Let's
DK.
go
then.
Devonta.
Okay, all right.
No,
all
go
right.
DK.
Let's build the Philly. Let's build the Philly. We'll team correlate. Maybe, just maybe, we say we're gonna get a nice Philly stack here. There's potential we get all the guys.
Oh, dude, if Hurts is here on the comeback, we're definitely just tack them on. Let the players figure it out in the playoffs. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's also fun in these first two picks because you can onslaught the Bengals, which may be a recency biasy approach since it did just win the tournament last year. But like at 101, 102, that's the only spot where you can get Jamar chasing T. Higgins. And then after that point, no one drafts Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's ADP is like, as it shows, is that 55 it is currently?
Yeah.
Yes.
Tyler's tilting here, John, because Tyler's tried this many times and it's not.
I get tagged every time he gets taken ahead of ADP, John. So
you haven't got it yet? I've gotten it twice already.
I haven't gotten it since pre-draft.
Dude, because no one wants Burrow once T. Higgins and Chase are off the board at the second, third round turn. And so Burrow will fall all the way back to the third, fourth round turn.
We're good with Hurts here to get our
absolutely.
Nice,
yeah. This is a no-brainer. Let them figure it out. It may even not correlate, but in doing that, I don't care. We're just going to try.
No, there's no greater correlation. Look at this. Delightful.
I think it's just one of those where I'm willing to take these chances and say we'll work it out. And then if you have the big Saquon week and you have the big Jalen Hurts week, do you have enough to be able to carry you through the playoffs? And it does push you towards those kind of 3 quarterback builds that you talked about, John. And I know some people really will do everything possible to not. They want to build more fragile. But I'm quite happy going down the road of I would rather stack 3 quarterbacks, particularly if I'm stacking them with waster positions like tight end, where I need the quarterback to just drag someone along. So, yeah, I'm good with that. I think it's a fun way to build, and it's an interesting one, and it's going to be more unique than a lot of teams, which feels like it's worth something.
And if Jackson Dart is starting in the second half of the season, which we can easily project since the Giants just look at their schedule through week 7 and then they have a bye, everyone is getting benched. Russell Wilson, James Winston, they're not surviving through the first 7 games. Then Dart, because of his rushing upside, has so much more outs than Aaron Rodgers, and they have a similar ADP, and it just makes no sense because the way Dart scores, it lends itself to top 12 weeks. Aaron Rodgers would have to get extremely lucky again. His top 12 weeks, of course, last year only came when the Jets were completely out and playing for absolutely nothing.
And included his best friend Devontae Adams as well as Garrett Wilson. Last time I checked, the Pittsburgh wide receiver room, nowhere close to that amount of talent right now for him to quote unquote cook.
It's so crazy because DK Metcalf and Calvin Ridley are logically 150 plus target players, but they're falling only because their quarterback situations are very questionable. But man, like if you start your drafts with already like a 200 plus target guy, one of the first 3 or 4 options, you can then come back and round out your room with wide receiver 2 and 3, who's also going to get 150 targets. And so I just close my eyes and I'm like, I'm going to take that on and let's hopefully figure it out.
Yeah. And to that point, we know that Mike Clay is, the gold standard of projections, but we're playing best ball and we're playing best ball mania. And so as far as tournaments are concerned, we're trying to chase the highest, least likely tail outcomes that when we're right, we're lapping the field and we're unlocking untapped potential. And so part of that is like, the Jets are probably projected for a low pass rate team right now. So the entire market was down on the Chargers last year. And because the run game was so poor and the receivers were stronger than they thought, they just leaned into the pass. And we see this schematically shift on both sides of the ball. And you can't predict that ahead of time, but by investing in sound talent and sound opportunity, you can really unlock the tail outcomes when things line up well.
But what happens if Breece Hall is traded to the Cowboys next week? and we know the Cowboys need help at running back.
I can stop drafting Miles Sanders. Thank God. Please let that happen. I want to stop drafting Miles Sanders, but I can't because there's too much of a discrepancy between his and Javonte Williams' ADP when nothing's set in stone.
Yes,
right.
I would love that. Get Breece Hall over there ASAP.
But that's it. It's like that's how little it takes for the changing situation because Braylon Allen, much as he's a fun player, is not Breece Hall, and then you've changed everything. We're back on the clock. Deebo Samuel, Jacoby Myers, Ricky Pearsall, the top wide receivers, Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed. Any of these running backs ahead of the wide receiver, Daigle?
Not in my opinion. We can tack on another wide receiver here.
Tyler, where are we going?
I prefer the rookie, but if Daigle likes Deebo, I'll give him Deebo.
We can take Matthew Golden. That's fine. I just hate drafting the first of an ambiguous target tree. We got like 5 guys we can take there, so I don't like digging in first.
How do you feel about Deebo this year? I mean, we can come back to this after the next pick, but I'd love to kind of pick your brain about whether he's washed or not. So the queue is the queue's pretty much still intact in terms of the running backs. It's Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson, Tony Pollard. Plenty of upside guys, but it's very much the question mark tier. Deebo, I've had a hard time clicking him. He's a few spots past ADP for me in my rankings, which means I just don't tend to see him because the wide receivers are all disappearing at this point. But are you completely fine with Deebo? He's gone now, but okay, well, let's come back to it. Ricky Pearsall here, Jaden Reed, Caleb Johnson. What's your fancy, Daigle?
Not Caleb Johnson. I'm good with Pearsall or Reed. Pearsall's fine.
Tyler, Mylene.
Unless, does it make sense? Yeah. Does it make sense to y'all to have both Golden and Reed?
I lean Pearsall because I think taking Golden at ADP is a reason to fade Reed at ADP. I think Josh Downs is an arbitrage on the same type of profile, but I think better outs considering, Downs has been doing it, whereas Reed just got a first-round wide receiver talent. And the only reason for me to lean that way is that we do know that, this role in Green Bay is pretty valuable as far as explosives, as far as best ball is considered. We're trying to get spikes. We're trying to get spikes at the right time. Week 17 versus Baltimore, 2 playoff games, an offense that should absolutely be pushing Green Bay. Those are the things that kind of stick around in my head. People don't love the Matthew Golden profile. People didn't love the Ladd McConkey profile. There's some analytical similarities there. I am a believer that Golden's 40 was juiced and not real. That said, he has real speed, and he's probably the most talented receiver from a draft capital perspective we've seen in Green Bay in a long time. And we know that LaFleur will cater to these wide receiver strengths. And I think there's a real chance that Golden and Doubs are the only 2 receivers that, hit that 80+% snap share, not rotated out. And I think that's just far more valuable for a week in and week out ceiling and for ceiling spikes. And that's just a reason to chase it, especially if Love, we saw in his first year, Love, upswings, downswings. He upswung at the right time, the back half of the season. Last year was real spotty. A bunch of reasons to say that, but we know that Love does have this sort of aggressive pass ceiling to unlock. And if Golden is a way to unlock that, I think it's more realistic than Reed at ADP. It might be a blind spot, it might be a bias, but instead of double stacking those, I'd rather just say that Golden's worth it because Reed is not worth it. Because I'd rather invest in Dubs much, much cheaper, kind of like the Javonte Miles Sanders thing. I can get a similar type of bet on this offense without having as much opportunity cost. And Ricky's another first-round talent in his second year with a soft schedule and a good offense. And that just seems like an easy bet to make.
Well, I'll take it a step further and say, even with Dubs on the team, it was Dontavian Wicks, who goes much later, who leads the team in targets. So
very fair.
Last year. So I just skip Dubs then and go to Wicks. And I typically grab him as my wide receiver 6 or 7 because, again, he just led the Packers in targets.
No, okay. I click Wicks plenty. But what could go wrong? Reinvesting in a 7th round pick.
What could go wrong?
Okay, so back on the clock. Obviously, we kind of padded out wide receiver room a little bit, so we could take one here if you guys like anyone, or we could take the likes of Scatterbo.
I would go Jalen Warren. Trey Harris is fine too. I'm trying to think of these stacks we need to start building right now as well.
Scatterbo has some week 17 correlation with Brock.
God, it's fine.
No, it's okay.
Trey.
You said Trey. I
prefer
Trey.
Trey.
Fine. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean the Chargers definitely have got one of those kind of really nice Week 17 games. They play the Texans, don't they? Which feels like on paper it could easily be a very high points total. So I'm not against that one at all. And it also gives us another kind of out to a QB stack with Justin Herbert. So let's say this, and then after the next pick, I want to circle back to Debo, but Cam Scatterbo, Jalen Warren, Tyron Tracy. I'd be fine going Jalen Warren ahead of Scatterbo. I've said I think he's undervalued.
Yeah,
Daigle,
I like Warren and Tracy here.
Tyler?
Yeah, Tracy's been kind of the faller, so I'd rather go with Warren just simply because both offenses kind of project to be pretty poor. But if and when Rodgers does sign, I think a lot of the prices will rise just because of certainty. I like Caleb Johnson as a player just fine. I don't love his price. He's probably the most aggressively third-round pick running back we've seen on this site in a long time. And so if you're going to give me the arbitrage to it that also has, pass down usage, and then it's just also contingent back. Like anything happens to Caleb, Warren's going to get a majority of the work. And that's not necessarily priced in at this quite as much either. So, and if the defense isn't as good as they hope it to be and play kind of ball control, the offense is going to have to move it a little bit more than they'd like. So I think there's plenty of reasons to be in on Jalen. I like Cam just fine. But Jalen's proved he's a very good running back in the NFL. And coming back from his injury, he was still pretty efficient and outplaying Najee. And I don't want to forget how much we love Warren.
So, Daigle, like last year, just circling back to Debo before we completely leave this alone, but like I was really high on Debo, which might be part of the reason why I'm finding him a harder click now. But to me, he just looked a bit more out of juice. His lowest receiving success rate of his career, rushing yards before contact dropped from 3.8 yards to 1.6. It just didn't feel like he was able to earn targets even at the right level, like 51st in first read target rate, even without Ayuk on the field. What is it that makes you optimistic from this year?
Well, if you look at the broken tackle metrics and what he forced when he got the ball in his hands, pretty much nothing changed. He was still an absolute machine. The volume went down. I understand the yards per target and things like that went down, but also what's good about this offense is that he doesn't overlap at all his route tree with neither Terry McLaurin or Noah Brown. He's kind of in his own lane that takes away from Austin Eckler more than anything. So I just love that they have a player now that is their second best receiver and does not steal from Terry McLaurin, thus opening the field up more. So I do still love like Deebo Samuel in a post-pneumonia, post-injured ankle, post the 49ers being quite literally losing the most games to injuries. If you look at Football Outsiders numbers, Aaron Schatz's numbers, I should say, like what happened with the Niners last year was all incredibly unlucky, the most unluckiest team in the league. And so we just ignore everyone that came from that situation.
We're on the clock. Bo Nix has fallen 20 picks past ADP. If anybody wants to value hound our last quarterback, or we have the running backs, and then we have Marvin Mims and Christian Kirk. What do you want to do here, Daigle?
Yeah, let's add Nix, and then let's hope to get Mims back since we're still looking for wide receivers here. This team, we don't have to have a third tight end, and so I'm really open. Like, is Goddard still on the board for us here? Has to
absolutely,
be, right? Yeah. Him. I understand Pat Freiermuth falling because of the recent trade rumors, but him and Pat Freiermuth and Hunter Henry, I think I'm going to be overweight on Hunter Henry, especially just because they have no one. They have no one competing for their snaps.
Yeah,
Dallas Goedert. I'm not sure why. I'm honestly not sure why he goes so late, because when he was healthy, he was still a top 12 tight end. He just missed games for injury, but still be a top 12 tight end around AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. It's really weird how the rooms are treating him.
He fell about 30 picks over the course of 3 months with all the trade and cut rumors.
Yes.
And then he restructured his contract. He rose from like 150 to 140. And now he's just anchored at ADP because projections, even liking him more than a lot of his compatriots, they've just decided that, he's boring and therefore not moving up. And so, yeah, he's been a heavy target of mine because he's the third pass weapon on a great offense. Mims goes right in front of us. Do we want to take Charbonnet as running back 3 with the value, or do we want to just go ahead and get the third stacked Goddard, or is there anyone else on the board you like, Daigle?
Don't mind. Well, how far ahead of we are in ADP? We're like 3.
We're right at ADP for Kirk. If you
right
want
ADP.
I would go Charbonnet. I'm fine with Charbonnet.
Okay.
Because we're still going to keep
value team.
We're going to have to keep building out this running back group.
Yeah. I'm just going to hit back on one of the questions in the chat. So before saying traded Drake London and 2026 second round picks for Garrett Wilson and James Cook. How did I do? Well, using Dynasty Expert Rich's survival guide, which if you're a YouTube member, hop in the Discord and you can find a link to that, including his trade calculators, all his rookie rankings and everything else. That's on the Garrett Wilson, James Cook side being the worst side by about 10 points. Unless those second round picks end up being quite late, I think I prefer the Drake London side of that one.
I think it's a pretty good class next year. So
yeah,
like I got a couple offers for 2026 as well. And, just depending on the player, but a lot of the times, I didn't really want to move around from this year's first round. Which, by the way, speaking of Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey, dude, like my rookie drafts, I got 0 RJ Harvey because you have to take him 107, and it's like that's too rich. It's just we've done this before with running backs. It's way too expensive for him. So unfortunately, that's the one guy I have like none of in my dynasty drafts.
The whole Sean Payton Joker stuff, and the whole Sean Payton's doing this, like how many times do we fall for Sean Payton going, okay, this is the guy who's going to unlock things, and then you get Marvin Mims rookie season where his most meaningful contributions are punt returns or something, or Troy Franklin. Like I've done this dance before. I don't mind sprinkling him in, but I think he's very expensive in best ball as well this year.
You don't want to go all in on a Sean Payton back based on vibes and aura, who's 24 years old at the 107 in Dynasty. Daigle, come on. Where's the downside?
And because of that, like I have so much freaking Matthew Golden and Emeka Ibuka because they would drop to like 202, 203 because everyone was instead so enamored with like the third round running backs. And it's like, guys, like we got to calm down. It's still first round wide receivers and target trees that will sort themselves out. Like Chris Godwin has played 1 full season since 2020. Mike Evans once in the last 6 years. Like those guys are not fully healthy ever. There will be a way where both McMillan and Ibuka like get on the field. Do not worry about that in May and June.
Well, on top of that, I'm pretty sure the reason they took Ibuka is because this is the last contract year of Evans. The rest of them are void years. So if he walks, Evan, it's Ibuka and Godwin in tow. Who are the only, and then McMillan, the only 3 receivers that will be under contract after this season. And a lot of people just decide they know exactly how things are going to work out, and the NFL always throws chaos to remind people that things are going to shake up.
I jumped on the. Well, I'll take a second. Let's go back to this.
Can I make an argument for Ray Davis to give us a bit of correlation with our Eagles? That's Eagles at Bills. Obviously, you can tell yourself a story that the Bills are having to go pass heavy. We saw Ray Davis have that pass catching upside.
Sure. Yeah, Goddard unfortunately goes a few picks ahead of us, so we'll have to just settle for the double stack Hurts.
Ray Davis is also good because like Ty Johnson had a bigger weekly role, but we saw that if James Cook is out, Ty Johnson, like Justice Hill, at least what I believe Justice Hill would be, he is not the guy they then lean on because he can't do that. Ray Davis is instead the 20-plus touch guy. And Ray Davis went for over 120 yards from scrimmage, I believe, in that game against the Jets. So, Ray Davis is like the contingency option you want, despite not being involved weekly, but who cares about that in this kind of format?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're about to go back on the clock. Obviously, now we're up to 4 running backs, so it's a little less urgent. We could go to a tight end and get a second tight end if we want, or we could look at quarterback. Tyler, what are you thinking?
Well, I don't think it's quarterback. It's probably running back or receiver here. Daigle, are you seeing anything that pops out to you that you want to pull up here?
Dude, I'm such a y'all gotta get me off Jalen McMillan. I'm such a huge fan, especially like the fact that he literally won people their leagues in the fantasy playoffs, the best ball tournaments as well. And now all of a sudden, all because they drafted Ibuka again, because Evans and Godwin cannot stay healthy. They've proven that. Like for some reason now McMillan has fallen when he's the guy who just won everything for you. I do not get it.
Well, and with that, Daigle, I would love to be your intervention here, but because we haven't taken him a lot, and because I just got done talking
No one
about
takes
my
him but me.
well, I just got done. I can't in the same breath say, chaos reminds everybody that we know nothing and it will reign supreme. I can't sit here with a straight face and then say there's no way that McMillan doesn't meet or exceed his ADP. Because I think another out is that we're baking in regression for this Tampa Bay offense, but the Tampa Bay offense just is getting back one of the receivers healthy who missed, 2/3 of the season last year after crushing. And then on top of that, they added a first round wide receiver. So the depth is going to keep this intact. So from this standpoint, they could just be a very good pass heavy offense, and McMillan and Igbuka rotate more than we'd like. And at that point, McMillan is just a touchdown spike in a top 12, if not top 8 offense. And at that point, those are archetypes we would like to attack, especially in the playoff weeks. I mean, week 17, Miami.
Well, that's it. Daigle, you've got that as one of your tier 2 week 17 matchups. Yep. Is that just like down to Miami's defense potentially being utterly atrocious this year?
There's that, but there's also that those are two teams, 49ers included, we saw like the splits were vastly different than when they were at full strength. Dolphins were literally like first in EPA on offense, the most efficient offense in the league with Tua. And then without Tua, they were 31st. It's just like night and day. And so if Tua's healthy, if the Bucs were at full strength, because last year with Evans and Godwin not on the field, Baker Mayfield, the Bucs lost all of those games, and Baker Mayfield averaged 6.5 yards per attempt. An entirely different player, which again is why I believe they added Igbuka. This is not a statement in a good or bad way towards McMillan. It is the fact that they know they cannot afford to lose one of Godwin or Evans. God forbid both of them are out again, because their offense then becomes useless. This is why in season long, everyone went and picked up Cade Otton at that time. And Cade Otton was fine, but that was a detriment to the offense. Like Jonnu Smith being important for Miami, that is a detriment to the team. That's not a good thing when Jonnu Smith, Cade Otton, Evan Ingram are the best parts of your offenses. That's why you miss the playoffs.
Okay, back up. So obviously we can still get our second tight end. There's plenty of time for that. Jalen Wright would be a little week 17 correlation on McMillan if we wanted to. That feels possibly a little thin. 12 seconds to go. What do you think we need here, Tyler?
I like Stranger Pierce. Daigle, do you have anything you like better?
No. I don't mind Strange here. Strange, Henry, Jasicki.
Yeah, I like Strange. We get him a little bit past ADP, but I think he presents a really fun access to a really good offense where, similar to like Philly, I could easily see BTJ, Hunter, and Strange being the 3 consolidated targets in a pretty good offense. We already know that T-Law and the tight ends, which sounds like a great band from the 1960s, is a very fruitful fantasy harvest, and getting to access that, one of the, if not the cheapest besides Damian Brown piece of this offense, at a position where scoring touchdowns is what matters. And it seems like the tight end position in Jacksonville and the Cohen offense is ripe for the pickings. I love that a lot, and I have zero issues taking a 0 at tight end, which famously can score 0 points even when everybody's healthy and playing.
Yeah. So we've got 2 picks left. We've got 3 picks left in total. We've got 15, 16, 17, 4. My game is off tonight. I've been busy in the 20-round streets, throwing me completely in these 18 rounds. But we're back on Alec Pierce, Jalen Wright, Pat Bryant, Michael Wilson, DeAndre Hopkins.
I think you wait until like the next tier of wide receivers, because then we get into veterans who are going to soak up snaps that everyone's just forgetting about. So I'd rather get our running back out of the way here.
Yeah, I agree with Wright.
I'm comfortable with Wright and Shipley. Those 2 guys.
Well, we have Saquon, so I'd rather not handcuck it.
You're right. I totally forgot about that. You're absolutely correct.
Cool. And I agree with you. I like Pierce just fine, but I also think this is the most who gives a shit flat tier of wide receiver. I think for probably 5 rounds, those guys are all the same, and you're just getting different flavors, and you're better off just stacking and attacking tier breaks at running back. And we look at Rico, Roshan, Braylon all go ahead of ADP as part of that tier. And so the fact that we keep getting tight ends and running backs that are at the end or in the middle of tiers, despite being on the turn and kind of pushing construction, feels really nice.
The current meta that I have been seeing, at least right now in drafts, is round 16 through 18. I'm using those to tack on my wide receivers, whether it be correlation or with stacks, just because, again, there are so many veterans that are going to play and have significantly better odds to make an impact on our lineup and not give us zeros than like the leftover rookie running backs that everyone is like trying to make happen instead in that tier. So I'll gladly take Adam Thielen, Darius Slayton, Diami Brown. The list goes on over Woody Marks, Kyle Monaghan, all these guys who just aren't going to play.
Absolutely.
The Kamani Badals of the world.
Everybody loving Woody Marks because, they drafted. If you add up all the draft capital, I'm like, look at how Caserio drafts. He just likes to push his chips in and just take his guys like Kyle Shanahan. That doesn't mean they're good. And we got a report that the only team that J.K. Dobbins has visited and had contract talks was after the draft with the Houston Texans. So it's like, I'm not going to get out over my skis until these rookies, the late rookies, get into camp, especially for veteran deference heavy teams like D'Amico Ryans and some of these other organizations are that, they just defer to the veterans. I mean, we saw way too much Robert Woods, the last few years. I'm not gonna get my hopes up for Woody Marks, even if same thing with Isaac Tesla. Okay, they traded 2 third-round picks for that, but that's as much as their draft board and not giving a shit about, future picks as it is about building into the next 2 years in their minds about how they're allocating drafts.
I think with the Lions, I'm a little more willing to take Tesla and just take the dart throw on him because they've made these kind of big sweeps before where they've reached compared to the consensus. They've been right about it at times, but it definitely isn't a player where I'd be much more going to go above like 5 to 6%. He's over a complete portfolio, but I think he's if I can correlate him, I feel okay about drafting him every now.
Are we good with this being a 5 running back room, Daigle? Are you preferring to do, if Dart is still there? I know you said you don't mind doing 3 quarterback builds with an elite. We get the cheapest elite. Is that kind of your lean? Is like a 3-5-7-2?
Yeah. I also wouldn't mind another running back here, but it's not something I'm gonna like really go overboard on. Even if it includes
we got Knicks, so I'm okay with the running back here. Which one do you like?
That's the greatest question, isn't it? No, I mean Blake Corum, I guess among these.
Okay, is there a receiver who you like better? No. Okay, Corum.
No, just because we can wait. We can wait for these guys. Like Tutu and Wicks will come back to us. Calvin Austin will come back to us.
Yeah, we've got 2 more picks to go. I'm assuming we're good with just the 2 tight ends, but
I'm cool with 2 tight ends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Are we going to add 2 receivers now, or are we going to do 2-6-8-2? Is that the plan, Daigle?
I'm comfortable with 2-6-8-2. Yes, if y'all are.
Well, I'm asking you. I think we've built just fine.
God, Tyler Shuck. I know the Badge Bros are on top of Tyler Shuck too. That ADP is insane. He's going to start week 1.
He's going to be Tyler redacted next year after he burns them all.
Okay, so we got 2 picks left. Any argument for Jackson Dart ahead of any of the running backs or like wide receivers?
I think the wide receivers will be our pick here. Is there any correlations we can round out for week 17?
Well, we could go Indy. Indy give us some correlation. The Colts were playing the Giants, which obviously we've got Scadaboo in there, didn't we?
Strange and Mitchell will play each other week 17. Wicks stacks up with Matthew Golden.
I'd be good with Dontavian Wicks.
Okay. You go with that?
You're never gonna have to tell me don't draft Dontavian Wicks.
I just
you only lose a martingale if you stop betting it, right?
Yeah. I think the overcorrection is too much. But just going back to Blake Corum, Daigle, at ETR or for yourself, what's the kind of expectation between Corum and Jarquez Hunter? How close do you think that battle's going to be?
It's, in my opinion, we're taking the same stance as Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, and that, again, there is no leader right now for this role. Thus, the ADP discrepancy is egregious. So just taking Blake Corum, thinking that there's no guarantee Jarquez Hunter is the backup. Jarquez Hunter sexier for sure, but Sean McVay has talked up his running back every single year. So it's not something like we're actually taking into account. So you just get shares of both, honestly. It's a political answer, but you just play both sides.
Sean McVay is that guy that is always talking up his hot girlfriend, and then you meet her and you're like, good for you, buddy.
I mean, this is someone that they healthy scratched Cam Akers and then brought him back as a lead back. Kyron Williams, I mean, how many times has he just told everyone, hey, I'm actually not going away despite what you think? So it's probably just ultimately going to be all Kyron Williams again.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we got news.
Very worried about that.
We got news in April that they were talking to Kyron about extension. Extension. We got additional news that they're still talking about it, but they're not super close on it. A month later, I expect that to be done. They tend, the Rams tend to talk about extensions and stuff. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, I was not buying into Corum until we did get some like weird. Oh, I think Corum might be more involved from Jordan Rodriguez, like really late in camp last year before they lost 4 O linemen before week 1, where the team obviously just decided we just have to trust our vets and make it work. So I do think that was Corum very good? No. Was he bad? Meh. If Kyron misses any time, I could easily see McVay deciding that the guy that's been in the system longer is the guy they're going to lean on because he was a fan of him. I think Hunter is more explosive, but he's gotten some like explosive return type of talk. Okay, so last pick here, Yoshi. We've just got Darts, Ray McLeod, wide receiver 3 for Atlanta. Tucker stacked with Bowers, Franklin stacked with Knicks. Shout if you see anything you like.
I don't mind Franklin with that stack, but Daigle, you go with it. 5 seconds.
Yeah, Franklin. I think we need some more Broncos correlation here, so that's fine.
Cool. Famously, all he does is catch long touchdowns. So as wide receiver 8, that seems fine.
As the chat pointed out, Dart also third quarterback wouldn't have been bad. But I'm fine. Like I said, that's what I usually do. I'm totally fine with 2 quarterbacks in this situation, though.
Yeah, I think we ended up Dart would have been fine. Unfortunately, it would have been naked Dart because Slayton goes ahead of Dart, where we potentially would have taken him, I believe. So ideally you take your guy, you have him stacked. I like Dart just fine, but we did end up getting a 2-round discount on Knicks. Mm-hmm. So, from that standpoint, it felt prudent we kind of attacked volatility and contingency at receiver. And at that point, you're probably prudent adding in quantity to help offset, the volatility of the low weeks.
Yeah, Tyler, if you'd be so kind to just recap this team for us in a minute. But anybody who was gifted a membership and hasn't already jumped in the Discord, find the link below. It's on the post page on the YouTube. Like I say, there's so much going on in there. We're currently slow drafting a team together, which is bound to win the $2 million if this one doesn't. We've got loads of exclusive stuff as well, including all Rich Dynasty content, which is as good as it gets out there. But Tyler, if you'd be so kind.
We finished with a 2-6-8-2 with our big Daigle energy team. Jalen Hurts, Bo Nix at quarterback, 2 rounds after ADP for the ADP value enjoyers. Saquon Barkley, Jalen Warren, Zach Charbonnet, Ray Davis, Jalen Wright, and Blake Corum at running back. Wide receiver Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith, Matthew Golden, Ricky Pearsall, Trey Harris, Jalen McMillan, Dontavian Wicks. What could go wrong? Troy Franklin stacked up with Bo Nix. And at tight end, Brock Bowers, also some more value, and Britton Strange. Honestly, Daigle, send this to Leone. He might cream his spreadsheet seeing all this value on this team.
I was about to say, this is one, you can screenshot it. That's fine for the pub. But this is one that probably gets positive comments, and you don't want that. You only want to screenshot Davis Maddock drafts that have 2 running backs at the end. You just want the insane shit to get clicks and comments, not this. This is too sound.
Oh, no. I'm saying this is for you and ETR to be like, oh my God, ETR just builds value. Look at all this value.
That is value. Although the value is not like anything we do. That's the room's fault. But yes, I explained the way I typically draft. And yes, for at least right now, it's probably going to change come July and August. But I do think around 16 through 18, you should reserve for your 3rd tight end and last 2 wide receivers, because that's where the value is currently. And that includes anchor RB builds, where then you go away and start drafting wide receivers heavy instead, come back in around that Jalen Warren, Jordan Mason tier, because the tier of running backs before that, I feel the wide receivers are significantly more important there.
No, I totally agree. I heard you give the same similar construction take with Josh and Hayden, and I do think it's one that goes under discussed. Is I think you got to play your room really well, and to do that, first and foremost, you have to have a really good understanding of where the pockets are to hit.
Oh yeah,
and have an idea of, as you're drafting, like not fitting structure to your team too early, but as it starts coming together through the first 4, 5, 6 rounds, having an idea of where those pockets are and how you need to attack them in order to stay in structure is such a key fundamental that I think is easy to forget when you just see guys, or it also helps you not panic because you also know that pockets have tiers. And as long as you get those tiers, we have no certainty over anything. We feel really comfy about everything. And then by August, we're going to look at half these picks and go, what were we thinking? We knew nothing. Yeah. So just attacking those pockets to stay in structure is so important.
Well, there's just one of the most obvious spots, which is really something which you want to be avoiding this year. It's the wide receiver dead zone, isn't it? And you kind of look, I think it's like from pick 96 or so, Michael Pittman. Then over the next 2 rounds, you've only got 5 wide receivers drafted in: Trey Harris, Keon Coleman, Rashid Shaheed, Rashad Bateman, and Kyle Williams. And it just becomes so thin so quickly compared to guys like Michael Pittman, Jaden Higgins, Leaf Burden, Egbuka, Cooper Kupp before that. And if you're left needing wide receiver in those rounds, it's so hard not to end up just pulling receivers massively ahead of ADP to fit structure. So, yeah, and if there's one lesson that we should all have learned from last year, it's that, sometimes you just got to take what the draft room is giving you and ADP is giving you, rather than trying to bend massively to a structure that might not really work with the ADP we've got.
Especially as Daigle pointed out, there's several players right now with ADPs that are beyond stale. They have not moved in months as much as they should. And until they move, I mean, and you mentioned it. Oh, you have a lot of player X, Y, and Z. Well, I expect it to happen until their ADP shift, and then you don't feel the need to take them because now they enter in to another tier or 2 in some cases, depending on the rise, where, well, that's no longer the best pick in that tier. And so as time goes on, if you're a volume drafter, if you draft throughout the summer, ADP shifts are going to move those types of exposures anyway, because, I think it's a good thing to hammer mispriced players when you can, because it's going to allow you to take advantage of other prices. And at the end of the day, we're going to get a lot wrong, but just attacking obvious misses, obvious early traps, obvious early hits, and then just try to build around those things is a really good way as well, to build your teams from a portfolio perspective.
Yeah, John, like if we would have gone 3 QB in this one, if it wouldn't have been, obviously we could have gone Jackson Dart with the end, where would you have been looking to take your 3rd QB within the draft, if you just go back to the draft board?
If I were doing this team on my own, I'd probably wait until the very end. Again, I mentioned Shuck, and so I probably veer away from one of these wide receivers and go Shuck instead, and then come back trying to get, which I would have been wrong, but like Jawan Johnson around at a 3 tight end build, something like that. So I think it would have been 6, 7, 3, 3 instead, something like that.
Yeah, 3, and 6, 7, 3. I like those builds. We've had BBM.
They're not sexy. They're so condom laden. Like, they're not fun.
They are, but guess what? Safe sex keeps you out of trouble.
That's true. I'm not paying child alimony to this day, child support to this day at 37 years old. So you're right. Condoms are fun.
A wise man once said the easiest way to accumulate wealth is by not going into financial ruin.
Instead, I'm taking, what did I do last night? Oh, I just took like way too many edibles and watched Edge of Tomorrow, which has to be, on the surface a terrible movie. But when you're on the 4th level, it was amazing. It was the greatest movie I've ever seen in my life.
You just described the entire 1980s run of awesome movies.
Yeah. Which I'm a big fan of. But now I'm in like my Tom Cruise phase. So I'm just rewatching everything he's in. But anyways, that's what I'm doing instead of paying child support. So,
well, aside from doing that, Daigle, I mean, obviously we are massive fans of ETR, love the content that you've been putting out, and obviously match made in heaven when we brought you on. Have you got anything particular that you're cooking up over the next few weeks that people should be looking out for?
Yeah, the big one that I'm working on, that I've been working on for a couple weeks now. So we're probably end of week, if not next week, from releasing is drafting tiers for every site, including Underdog. And that is when you're on the clock, the players you should be looking at, regardless of position. And so, like the first tier of players, for example, it won't be positional. It'll be every position that you should be looking at when you're on the clock in that first tier. And it'll probably be cut off like around if Brock Bowers is going 12 to 16, then the first tier will probably include, I don't know, 12 players. Again, it's still a work in progress right now, but yeah, I just want to make sure you have the group of players you should be looking at when you're on the clock tiered. And so that's the big one that's coming out very soon at Establish the Run. Otherwise, all of my like deep sleepers to have from round 16 on for every site, and the week 17 tiers, of course, and my top 5 last round stacks you can kind of add in the Saints and Panthers, for example, that all the players go late. Thus, you can just tack them on and cross your fingers from there, because a lot of things can happen in a 17-game season. Those, for example, are all on ETR right now.
Love it. And obviously, you can catch Tyler over on the Trifle Tower, as I've come to calling it, or the Tyfit Tower. Yeah, I can't pronounce it. Go on, Tyler. Your
YouTube
new
hates
channel.
it too. Yeah, naming it the Typal Tower was the worst SEO thing we could have done. I'm so glad I was right about that. But yes, every Thursday, the Typal Tower will be coming to you live. We'll start streaming from that channel like we did last week. We hit 100 subs there, so that means the fine folks come join us live this Thursday for our giveaway of 1 BBM entry. We'll be doing that every 100 subscribers. We'll do the giveaways live. 1,000 subs, we give away 5 Best Ball Mania entries. So come check us out. Go sub, go like, and come join in the giveaways. We're going to have a lot of fun there with the guys, Best Ball Guy and PPR Tyler.
Love it. Well worth everyone checking out. I will be diving into the FFPC streets soon because drafters have now kicked me out, and it's getting real thin out there for us UK folks, but that won't stop me. So we will be drafting some FFPC teams in the Superflex and in the 125. Daigle, we truly appreciate you being on the channel. I think you probably are one of the guests we've had on this channel the most over the last 2 years. So really do appreciate it. And thanks for hanging out with us. Everybody else, we'll catch you again very soon.